Welcome to The Life of Hair. My name's James Atkinson. Thank you for choosing to join to this week's episode. Now, in this week's episode, we've got Paige as our model. Now, Paige has got a lot of things going on with her hair that need a little bit of fixing and a little bit of rejiggering. There's lots of things that's happened to Paige's hair. We're going to discuss it in full detail in just a second. But if you want to see the full nitty-gritty of this technique, you want to know all the bones, all the details, because we don't put all of the nitty-gritty stuff in these YouTube videos because, unfortunately, people just skip past them and then those videos just absolutely flop. So I reserve all of those things for the Life of Hair Digital Academy, link down in the description. So if you click the link there, it will give you a 50% off for 6 months voucher, and you can see all of the behind the scenes stuff where it's all about making money. It's all about how you price these things. There's a business section where we talk about each of the individual processes that we do and how we can best monetize those and make sure that your services are profitable. Because I know there's a lot of people out there who are doing hair services and not making a profit on them, unfortunately. So if you want all that juicy stuff, then please go over there. But if you just want the pure technique, then you're in the right place. And if you enjoyed this episode, then please do me the favor of hitting the old thumbs up button, subscribing if you're new here, for loads and loads of content like this. Over 300 videos here on the channel, and I'll see you again in the next one. Hey Paige, right, I'm going to take down this barnet of yours.
It's a mess right now.
It's a mess.
Yeah.
It's a mess. Fix it.
It's got some spray in it.
Lovely,
Gorgeous.
lovely,
Fabulous.
perfect.
Yeah, that's
right
the
then,
look.
that's the look you're
That's
going
the
for.
Look, yeah.
That's the look, distressed. Okay, so Paige, tell us a little bit about your last year of hair history.
All right, so I shaved my head in the second lockdown.
Yes.
Because it was just not the vibe. And then I grew it back. So,
Yes.
because my hair's kind of curly naturally.
Yes.
So I grew it back, hoping it would be like all virgin and curly and gorgeous. And I thought, I was drunk in lockdown with my flatmate. And we were like, let's scalp bleach it. Let's go.
Yeah.
So we scalp bleached it, and then we scalp bleached it again, and then one more time. And then it started growing out, and then we decided to go for a back-to-back highlight.
Yeah.
But my hair can be a bit of a bitch to lift, so it's just not the one, because it's quite dark and it lifts very warm.
Yeah, it lifts really warm.
So I get quite a lot of banding through it.
Okay, cool. Well, let's take a little look at your hair as it is. So, as we can see, Paige's natural base is pretty dark. We'll get the level finder so you guys can see more accurately at home, because it's sometimes a bit tricky to convey over the camera, but you can see that it's pretty much a 3. There's a couple of areas through the hair here where, if I can hopefully just show you some banding. So we've got like roots, we've got a warm band, we've got over-lightened areas, we've got warmth behind it, we've got this pearlescent end colour that's kind of violety, pinky, ashy colour, which isn't a bad colour, it's just obviously a lot of things going on, purple shampoo in there, all that jazz. Today what we're going to focus on is just correcting Paige's colour, because there is an awful lot going on all the way through. So first section, horizontal section through the nape here. We've really got to assess here whether it's worth putting bleach into this hair or whether we just root stretch it. I think it's too damaged, too low down like that, so we're going to have to come up a bit. So we'll be starting just underneath the occipital bone with our section, because I do not want to fry that hair. I want it to grow. So let's come in, horizontal section, and we're going to do quite a fine weave here, like that. In with our foil, stick it down, and then up to the root area. Feed it through the sections that are a bit lower down. Beautiful. And then that's a little bit too much product on that hair, so you can just use your tail comb, push it back up. There are some darker bits in there, but it's mostly blonde, so I'm a little bit dubious as to put too much product in that area. So I'm just going to feed that back up. You lower the saturation, you'll lower the ability for it to lift, and therefore you won't get any breakage on that. You can also put the product inside the foil, like that, fold it by a third again. secure the back and fold your edges. Just feed the product up to the root area and then feed it down in those darker sections in the middle there. Trying our very bestest to avoid any of that really light hair. So with regard to this technique, it is very, very repetitive. So what I'm going to do is work my way up this section. I'll then swap sides and I'll do the nape area on this right hand side so that they can process evenly, and if I need to take them out then I can before I do anything else. You do need to obviously bear that in mind as you work through this particular technique, that you know, when you're working on hair that's been previously compromised, condition's got to be the first thing you think about. Result second, condition first. You can always go back and do it again at another point, but if you snap it off, you can't do it again. So we've got a tiny little triangle here, and a lot of people wonder what to do with this tiny little triangle. My advice is you just go straight through it. So my next section will be here, like that, and I will put a foil in there and another one above it, and I'll be left with a tiny little triangle at the top. Nothing really has changed apart from the width of the section. So we're getting slightly closer together as we work our way up the head. So the sections are now much, much closer together. And that's something that you kind of, you know, is a personal choice thing. I want to get a little bit more lightness into this crown area. I want a few more highlights in this crown area. I also want a few more highlights through the top front section. Underneath is a little bit more damaged. It's obviously been on a bit longer down there, and so therefore spacing them out, putting more of the natural in between the foils is probably a better idea for now while we recover this hair. And then we've got this small triangle again. We just split that triangle into two. We don't want to be afraid of gaps, you know, in between our foils here, because we are going to paint a colour in between those foils. So gaps in between is not a bad thing. It's just something that we have to actually do to create the technique. So onto the side sections now. I'm going to stick with a diagonal backwards section all the way through these side and top sections. You can see that I've completed the opposite side, so it gives you a good idea of exactly how this will turn out. But in terms of the actual placement of the sections and how we go about this technique, it is incredibly simple. You just keep your diagonal line that mirrors the hairline all the way through the technique, and you want a super fine section around the hairline. And remember, we've got some breakage around the front hairline from previous sessions that Paige had done on her hair in lockdown, and had somebody else do her hair. So I'm really being cautious to, you know, use a very low developer in this particular area. We've only got 10 volume mixed with our lightener in this particular instance. We've also just really making sure that we're taking ultra fine sections, so we get good even saturation throughout the section. It lifts cleanly and fast, because quite often when I'm teaching, I see people taking huge, great big sections and they struggle to get the saturation, and that causes an untold amount of problems with the lift. I'm obviously going to be painting a colour in between this technique, as I'd mentioned previously, and I still need to leave subsequent gaps in between each of the foils as we move through the technique. So in this particular instance, we've gone from virtually on the hairline, then we've got one that's only a couple of millimetres behind it, then we've got a 5mm gap, 7mm gap, and then finally we'll finish with a roughly a 1 centimetre gap. So they will just evenly space their way towards the top of that triangle section that I'm working towards, as you see right now. So let's jump straight into the top section, because nothing really changes at this point, and I'll just give you a heads up about the money piece. So we're now onto our front hairline / money piece. Now Paige wanted a very strong money piece, but the breakage on her front hairline
means that it's not really going to be possible to create a very strong money piece. There's just not the length. This is something that you do really need to bear in mind, guys, when you are telling your clients they can have or cannot have a money piece, is how long is that hair around their face. It's got to be down to at least their cheek for you to be able to make it look like a money piece, if not a little bit longer preferably, because you need enough hair for it to flow into the rest of the hair. And that is something that I've seen before, and I've seen stylists around me make that mistake where they've offered a client the potential to have a money piece, but in reality it's not actually plausible or achievable on that particular hair, just down to the absolute limited length that you've got around the face. So it's definitely something to bear in mind. This technique now is exactly as we did on all of the subsequent sections. We've got 2 foils which are pretty much back to back around the front hairline, and then we start spacing them out 5 mils, 7 mils, and then 1 centimetre, and then just 1 centimetre sections all the way to the top of this rectangle shaped section. Obviously we'll end up in a point at the top of the head just because we're working in diagonal, but just stick in that diagonal section and just keep working through, maintaining that 45-degree angle as you work through this section.
Root stretch phase of this particular technique, and it's really simple. You'll have seen this before if you've watched any of my videos where I've done these kind of techniques. I simply just paint down to the lip of the foil and I comb the product down using a 45-degree angle on my comb, and that just helps to blend the product down the hair. Okay, everything's on. 10 minutes, take it all off. I'm going to do a little tiny root shadow, root tap. So we don't want it to travel very far, maybe only a couple of millimeters down the hair, and it's just to diffuse the highlights. And we'll do this throughout. You don't want to overload it. Just tap, tap, tap on your roots like that. And it's just going to create just a little bit of blending at the root area. Really, really simple. We're not going to go right up to the front hairline here. We're not going to get too carried away because we want it to keep it bright around the face. Underneath we can go like here. Doesn't make any difference because the money piece is here rather than anywhere else. But we'll probably exclude the front hairline to a degree all the way through. But yeah, just nice and clean, nice and neat. Just take your sections horizontally. Don't need to work diagonally or any specific way for this, and just tap, tap, tap all the way through. Paige's hair, phase 1 complete. Now I said right at the beginning, you know, we want to say to ourselves, in these journeys, you can only go so far without spending 8 hours straight colouring someone's hair. We've probably been doing this already for about 5 hours to this point, and you know, we've created a great starting point. We will come back in and foil Paige's hair again. There's some breakage around this front hairline that I didn't want to foil, so I couldn't get any lightness into these areas, which I'd really like to have done to kind of accentuate a stronger money piece. But you kind of work on the hoof, like, you know, Paige said to me, can I have a money piece? Yes, she could in principle, but once I started seeing like the breakage around here, it just wasn't going to look good. So we've gone in with a bit of a softer, there's still some back-to-back foils in there. You know, and like Paige was saying, she flip-flops her hair around, she wears it middle, side, back, front, you know, all over the place. So it had to look good in all sorts of directions. And she also wears a lot of wigs, so she'll cover it up sometimes as well. So I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. If you have, then please hit the old thumbs up button. Comment down below if you've got anything else you'd like me to do. And we'll see you and Paige again for another episode very, very soon.